Before temples rose from the earth, before scriptures were penned, before kings claimed their crowns, there existed a gesture, a simple act, the breaking of a nut. But in the ancient traditions of Africa, this was no ordinary offering. It was a portal, a deliberate opening between the world of the living and the world of the divine. When the kolanut is broken, it is not simply shared, it is spoken. Its cracked shell opens a channel to ancestors, to spirits, to first causes. It says, "We are present, we are listening, we are ready." Across West Africa, from Nigeria through Ghana, Benin, Sierra Leone and beyond, the breaking of the kolanut carries the same ancient weight. Before we speak, let God and the ancestors hear, the ritual whispers. The nut becomes the microphone of the sacred, the altar of communion. It binds host and guest, speaker and spirit, offering and oracle. In its lobes and in its crack echo the first syllables of existence: invitation, acknowledgement, alignment. This is the story of OCOG, the first prayer of Africa. The ritual of the kolanut isn't an afterthought in the ceremony. It is the opening stanza of every dialogue between the physical and the unseen. It is where we, humanity, pause, remember, and re-enter the rhythm of creation. The nut represents more than hospitality. It is a symbol of unity, responsibility, respect. It reminds us that speech is not only our right, but our duty to something larger than ourselves. So, embark on this journey with me, into the code of communion, into the crack of a sacred seed, where breaking becomes bridge and sharing becomes prayer. The story of OCOG invites us to remember that before words form, connection already pulsed. Before we spoke, beings listened. Before we asked, creation answered. In Nigeria, the sacred language of communion begins with the kolanut. It is not a fruit, it is a threshold. Among the Igbo people, the ritual of OCOG is the deliberate opening of worlds. It begins when the elder, usually the oldest or most spiritually attuned in the gathering, lifts the nut to the sky. In that solemn act, he is not just raising a seed, he is raising a prayer. He invokes Chukwu, the supreme creator, Ani, the earth mother, and the ancestors whose spirits hover between realms. This invocation is not poetic excess, it is alignment between heaven above, the earth below, and the humans seated in sacred circle. The kolanut itself speaks. Its shape, its number of lobes, its texture, all carry encoded messages. A nut with 4 lobes is a blessing. It represents the 4 cardinal market days in Igbo cosmology: Eke, Orie, Afor, and Nkwo, the rhythm of spiritual commerce, the pulse of ancestral time. When the nut breaks cleanly and the lobes fall symmetrically, it is said that the spirits are pleased. But if it shatters in confusion, if the pieces refuse balance, the elder pauses, he reflects, because to break the nut wrongly is to invite imbalance, not just in the gathering, but in the world it mirrors. Among the Yoruba, the kolanut is known as Obi Abata, and it holds an equally revered place. In Ifa divination, the pieces of the nut are not consumed. They are cast, consulted. They speak in codes older than language. Each fall, each face, each silence, holds meaning. The Yoruba say, "Obi ki iparo." The kolanut does not lie, it reveals, it exposes. Through it, Ashe flows, an invisible current of divine force that animates all things. Ashe is breath, Ashe is destiny, Ashe is the truth beneath the spoken word. In both traditions, the kolanut is not merely a tool, it is the axis. It is where ritual becomes law, where gesture becomes contract, where speech becomes sacred. In Nigeria, the act of breaking kola is the act of aligning with the universe. Every motion carries memory. Every word that follows is measured. And so, from this land of ancient rhythm and spiritual architecture, we learn that speech is not born from lips. It is born from spirit. It begins not when we talk, but when we listen. And it begins always with the breaking of the nut. In the ancient kingdom of Dahomey, now the modern-day Benin Republic, the breaking of the kolanut carries the weight of cosmic law. Among the Fam people, this ritual act is not merely a symbol of welcome, it is a sacred covenant. The kolanut here is called a kola, and it is never broken casually. It is the nut of life, a living sigil of spiritual contract, truth, and unity. When Fam priests gather to invoke the divine twins, Mawu and Lisa, the moon and the sun, they begin not with song or scripture, but with the nut. This gesture opens the way for dialogue between humans and gods, between the visible and the unseen. Mawu, the gentle moon goddess, is the breath of compassion, rest, and wisdom. Lisa, the radiant sun god, is strength, action, and vitality. Their union is the axis of balance, night and day, feminine and masculine, stillness and fire. And so, when a kola is broken before their names are called, the pieces represent more than food. They symbolize the shared responsibilities of duality. Each lobe, passed from hand to hand, becomes a silent promise that those present will honor truth, speak with clarity, and uphold the harmony that creation demands. This is not merely ritual, it is law. The law of Mawu Lisa, which teaches that the universe thrives on balance, not conquest. When the nut is shared, destinies are bound. The act of eating together becomes sacred. It is not a meal, but a merger. The spirit enters the community as each person receives their piece, chews slowly, and reflects. To refuse the nut is to refuse peace. To break it together is to restore order that may have been lost. Among the Fam, a kola is more than hospitality. It is a mirror of cosmic ethics. It reminds all who partake that even the smallest gesture carries immense weight. Here, the kolanut becomes a bridge between heaven's design and earth's responsibility. It is a ritual of repair, a restoration of truth, and a reaffirmation that no true communion between people or gods can begin without harmony. In the lands of Ghana, where the wisdom of the Akan and Ewe flows through language, music, and ritual, the kolanut holds a place of solemn reverence. It is not just a gift passed between hands. It is the vessel of thanksgiving, the opening act of gratitude before anything sacred or significant may begin. Here, the nut accompanies the rite of a Seda, a thanksgiving ritual to Nyame, the supreme creator, who governs the heavens and all that breathes beneath them. Before any prayer is uttered, before any intention is declared, the kolanut is laid upon the altar beside two companions, water, the eternal symbol of purity, and palm wine, the essence of life's sweetness and communion. Together, these three elements speak a language older than Scripture. They form the trinity of sincerity, vitality, and respect. The elder, often seated with the calm authority of generations behind his voice, does not speak immediately. He lifts the nut slowly toward the sky and says, "Meda niame ase." I thank God. It is not performance. It is permission. In this act, he is not simply beginning a ritual. He is aligning the human heart with divine intention. The kolanut, in this context, becomes a spiritual seal. Its presence is required before the beginning of a birthright, a business agreement, a naming ceremony, or even a burial. Its offering is the first step in acknowledging that all life, its joy and its sorrow, returns ultimately to the hands of the Creator. It is a way of saying we do not act alone. We are seen. We are guided. This ritual does not belong to temples or priests alone. In Akan households, the gesture still lives. Whether shared by firelight in a rural village or over a modern family table in Accra, the nut remains the opening of hearts. It is never about food. It is about memory, about gratitude as the first law of creation. For the Akan and Ewe, to begin without thanks is to begin out of rhythm with the universe. And so the kolanut rests, cradled in palm and purpose. It speaks, silently, the truth of Ghana's soul, that before the tongue moves, the spirit must first bow, that creation itself begins not with command, but with thanksgiving. In Sierra Leone, where the Mende and Temne people have long honored tradition through ritual and rhythm, the kolanut, known locally as goro, becomes more than a ceremonial gesture. It is the key to dialogue, the seal of sincerity, and the silent witness of truth. Before any serious conversation, be it a village dispute or a negotiation of justice, the elders begin not with words, but with goro. They say, "Let us share kola, that truth may find a seat." In that moment, the nut is not a snack. It is a judge, a divine mediator placed between hearts and history. Its symbolism is deep-rooted and unmistakable. When the kola is broken and passed, it marks the moment when tongues are permitted to speak, but only in the presence of something greater. The unseen ancestors, the sacred spirits, the binding forces of harmony. This ritual does not simply open a meeting. It invokes the realm of accountability that no human court can fully contain. The act says, "What we say here is watched by the invisible and witnessed by the eternal." Even during colonial times, the foreign rulers who often dismissed African rituals as superstition quickly learned a lesson. In Sierra Leone, no decision could begin, no agreement could be honored without the presence of kola. To speak without it was to insult not just tradition, but the very moral structure of the land. The goro became a quiet but immovable guardian of justice. Without its presence, even laws lost their legitimacy. In Mende and Temne culture, the kolanut sits at the intersection of peace and accountability. Its breaking is the first act of reconciliation, a gesture that calls both sides to disarm their egos and remember the presence of the sacred. Elders believe that once goro has been shared, lies become heavier and truth becomes lighter. Its presence invites clarity and silences deception. It is not just food for guests, it is food for the soul. Here, the nut functions like an ancient treaty written not in ink, but in gesture. A covenant etched into memory, a shared understanding that before words are trusted, spirits must be summoned. The Goro is Sierra Leone's oldest courtroom, its first parliament, its original mediator. To share it is to say, we do not speak alone. The ancestors are listening. Let truth speak also. In the highlands of Cameroon, where the green earth meets ancestral memory, the Kolanut is not merely a ritual, it is a living bridge between souls. Among the Bamileke and the Tikar people, it is called Nkong, the nut of presence, the seed of sincerity. When a visitor steps into a home or a gathering, before names are exchanged or stories are told, the elder takes the Nkong in hand. With reverence, he breaks it and speaks the ancient words. May this life enter you, and may truth dwell between us. In that moment, the guest is no longer a stranger. They become kin, bound not by blood, but by spirit. To break Nkong is to open the gate of communion. It is a silent agreement that no hostility shall pass, no deception shall hide. The act does not just welcome, it consecrates. And like all sacred things, it cannot be rushed nor performed without meaning. Every piece shared is an offering of trust. Every bite taken is a covenant of peace. Kolanut here is both sacrament and diplomacy, a sacred transaction in which spirit becomes the foundation of relationship. This deep reverence finds voice in a Cameroonian proverb that echoes across generations. He who refuses kola refuses relationship. To turn down Nkong is to decline connection. It signals a breaking not just of etiquette, but of cosmic alignment. In a world where the unseen world walks beside the living, this rejection carries spiritual consequence. But to accept, to partake in Nkong, is to step into a circle of protection, respect, and truth. In this sacred gesture, Osi becomes more than tradition. It becomes a way of being, a cultural technology that predates temples and treaties. Here, the Kolanut is not a tool of religion. It is the embodiment of relationship itself. It teaches that spirit resides not only in the gods, but in the space between two people who agree to honor truth. Through the nut, one says, I see you, not just with my eyes, but with my soul. The Cameroonian Kolanut ceremony reminds us that before we build bridges of metal or stone, we must build bridges of meaning. And meaning, in the world of the Bamileke and Tikar, begins with Nkong, a small nut carrying the weight of hospitality, memory, and sacred trust. In the lands of Senegal and Gambia, where the Atlantic breeze carries echoes of griots and the wisdom of centuries, the Kolanut lives on, not just as a ritual, but as remembrance. Among the Wolof, Serer, and Mandinka peoples, it is called Goro, the nut of memory, the the seed that speaks backward and forward through time. Long before the rise of mosques, long before the call to prayer echoed through the streets, the elders would kneel upon the earth, place Goro before them, and speak to Rug, the Great Spirit, the silent architect of creation. There were no temples then, only the open sky, no scriptures, only memory held in breath and earth. The breaking of Goro is not a performance, it is a return to the source of voice, not just the voice of the speaker, but of all who came before. It is said among the elders, when you break Kola, your ancestors recognize your voice. That voice, carried in the smoke of incense, in the silence between words, becomes a beacon to the unseen. It tells the spirits that their names are not forgotten, that their blood still walks the earth in gratitude and reverence. Even today, in bustling markets or quiet compound courtyards, Goro travels, not just in bowls or baskets, but in pockets and palms. It is slipped into hands at weddings, births, and funerals. It is offered before business, before storytelling, before truth. It is the first language, the first key, the first invitation. Elders still say, if you want your words to be heard, feed them with Goro, because without it, your tongue is naked, your speech is unanchored. Among the Mandinka, the Kolanut ceremony blends reverence with intimacy. The elder lifts the nut, eyes the sky, and prays in a whisper meant not for men, but for the ancestors. Then he turns to the gathered circle and breaks the nut with care. Each piece is passed, not just as food, but as inheritance. To accept it is to step into the river of lineage. To eat it is to remember who you are. The nut becomes more than a tradition. It becomes the doorway through which the living and the dead shake hands. It binds the now to the eternal. And in a world that often forgets its roots, Goro continues to grow them. It reminds us that memory is not just a thing of the mind. It is a ritual of the body, a rhythm of the soul. In Senegal and Gambia, the kolanut is not offered to satisfy hunger. It is offered to nourish memory. To carry it is to carry the presence of those who whispered before you, and to break it is to call them home, into the silence, into the circle, into the sacred space where speech and spirit meet. From the red soils of Igbo land to the river valleys of Dahomey, from the sacred groves of Yoruba temples to the sand-swept villages of the Mandinka, one truth remains eternal. The kolanut is more than a seed. It is a signal, a gesture, a sacred technology rooted in spirit and soil. When the Igbo elder lifts the nut and invokes Chukwu, he opens a conversation older than language. When the Fon priest honors Mawulisa, he does not simply perform a ritual. He reactivates the cosmic harmony that shaped the world. When the Mende chief breaks Goro before judgment, he calls upon truth itself to sit among the people. And when the Mandinka elder whispers to Rug, it is not only prayer. It is ancestral memory made audible. The message running through each act, each people, each place is simple yet profound. Before we speak, we must listen. Before we act, we must align. Before we lead, we must bow. This is not submission, it is sacred order. Reverence before expression, communion before community, spirit before speech. Osi is not merely an Igbo tradition. It is not bound by tribe, nor limited by region. It is the shared language beneath the many tongues of Africa, the original liturgy, the first prayer, a code carved into ritual, rhythm, and relationship, a spiritual device built not by machine, but by meaning. When the nut breaks, it is not simply split, it is opened. A path is cleared, a silence is made sacred. And in that stillness, the divine speaks, not in thunder, but in memory, in intention, in breath. So remember this, you do not speak alone. You do not walk alone. The ancestors listen, the spirits watch, and through a single act, as humble as the cracking of a nut, you join a conversation that began before time. One Africa, one gesture, one prayer. If this story stirred something ancient in your soul, share it. Let it pass from hand to hand, voice to voice, like the nut itself. Comment below with your reflections, your stories, your truth. And subscribe for more journeys into Africa's sacred dialogues. Because the old ways still breathe, and they are waiting to be remembered.